Welcome back to another episode of the Teaching Nerds Podcast. I'm Ron Nober.
I'm Joe DiPaolo.
I teach technology, 3rd grade to 8th grade.
And I'm a 3rd grade teacher.
And we are joined by Assistant Principal or Vice Principal Christine Bertulis here at Southampton Township Schools. Welcome, Christine.
Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, guys.
Good morning, Ms. Bertulis.
Good morning, Mr. DiPaolo.
So we have an interesting topic that came up on Twitter at the beginning of September. Was a tweet by Laura Spencer. And it was a viral post that kind of sparked some debate on the importance of sharing, but also about self-advocacy in students. So that's kind of going to be our topic today. And as always,
2 yes mores.
1 no way. We'll start out with that. And today we're going to be doing sitcoms.
Oh man, TV shows, love them.
And we did TV shows before. This is specifically just sitcoms.
Situational comedies. I actually had to ask Alexa this morning because I wanted to sound like I knew what I was talking about. So I did a little background research. I don't play.
All right.
And sitcoms, situational comedies, and I'm excited about this.
All right. So we'll go ahead and we'll start. All right. So Christine, you're our guest.
Yes.
So would you like to start us off? 2 yes mores, 2 sitcoms that you could watch again and again and again, and one that you just don't care for.
And a situational sitcom, you said?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. A sitcom I could watch over and over again would be Friends.
Okay.
I like Friends. I also could watch, oh my gosh, it's not coming to me right now, with Kevin James.
King of Queens?
Yes, King of Queens.
Okay.
And I am not a huge fan of Seinfeld.
Okay.
All right.
I know. That's going to be a tough one for people to...
Not
something I could watch over and over again.
You just hurt my heart.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
A lot of times Ron gives things away. I'm thinking we might be able to figure out which one of his is.
Joe, do you want to go next? Or
Sure.
All right.
Fun fact, like I said, I was doing a little research. The Flintstones was the first animated sitcom airing in 1960 by my good buddy Hanna-Barbera. I grew up on those cartoons, Saturday morning cartoons. So my first sitcom is a favorite of my son and I, The Office.
Oh, okay.
Oh, man.
That's a good one.
And that is something I could watch over and over again,
Yep.
and we have watched over and over again. So my second favorite one, oldie, real old, Sanford & Son.
Oh,
wow, that is an old one.
And I used to have to watch it on Nick at Night. And
I remember Nick at Night.
Wasn't that awesome?
Yes.
I would be and my dad would be like, "Dude, what are you watching?" Because that was probably
right.
I used to
late
watch
80s,
Dragnet on.
Oh wow!
Nick
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah.
So I love those old shows. Now my one no way, and I'm surprised. Christine, knowing you were a big dancer and everything, I'm surprised this wasn't on one of your lists. Glee. I would say no way to Glee. I can't do it's too much.
It's a little cheesy.
It is, and there's it's pizzazz and they're dancing and they're singing.
A lot of jazz hands.
And so that would be my one no way.
All right. So mine, Office has to be one.
Oh, awesome.
Over and over again. Can watch Michael Scott
Mm-hmm.
over and over. And Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I can watch Seinfeld over and over. And my one no way, and I know a lot of people, it'll kind of be like your Seinfeld where people will be surprised. Big Bang Theory. Cannot get into it. Don't like it. I've tried and tried.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't.
Not your thing.
Yeah.
Not your thing. I would agree though with that.
You don't like it?
I can't really get into it either.
Yeah.
I mean, Sheldon's funny, but
yeah, kind of gets
take it or leave it.
Same thing
over
and over again. It seems like.
I think the older episodes are a lot better. And I think even one of my favorite TV shows was The Simpsons of all times, and I was watching The Simpsons when it was on the Tracy Ullman show.
Right. Yeah.
And I have all the DVDs up until I think it's season 18. But then everyone gets edgy and everything gets so political and. Not that
kind of loses its.
Well, it's fun, now all of a sudden every show's got a topic or an issue, and it's like, oh man, not that I only want fart jokes and stuff like that, but that that's, and not that The Simpsons was fart jokes, but it was like that silly humor.
I wasn't allowed to watch The Simpsons.
No way, really?
Yeah,
that was on the list for me growing up.
Really?
Yeah,
and that
a lot of people
early on in the early seasons, really.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm
and Married with Children. was
Yeah,
not allowed
that
to
was-
watch.
I wasn't
yeah.
allowed to watch that.
Yeah.
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 That's a great show, though.
90210 as well, but I snuck that.
You
No
snuck
way,
that in.
Oh,
really?
I snuck that in for
Wow.
sure. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah,
All right.
All right.
So there it was. 2 yes mores, 1 no way.
that was a fun one.
Sitcom edition. All right. So this post that came out from Laura Spencer, I believe it was a Facebook post, and it started out with a woman talking about that she took her son to the playground,
Right.
and he had a new toy with him,
Mhm.
and was swarmed by kids wanting to enjoy that new toy or share that new toy with her son, and the son said no.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, parents kind of got outraged, the kids got outraged that this child wasn't sharing, and how could she do that? And she basically said he doesn't have to share if he doesn't want to.
Right.
And it kind of got me thinking about one of our big pushes in school right now is kindness
Empathy.
and empathy
Mhm.
and
Caring about others.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And how do we go about balancing standing up for yourself and being kind and sharing and all
Right.
that? So you having the job of
Right, disciplinarian.
being a mother of 2 young
Mhm.
girls, we wanted to get your thoughts.
So I don't think there's a clear answer.
Okay, yeah.
I think it depends on the situation. So coming from the mom point of view, I'm thinking, okay, if I brought my daughters, who Abby's 2, Anna will be 6 in a couple weeks, to the playground, and they want to bring their new toy with them, this is what I would say to them before we leave the house.
Mhm.
Hey, Anna, just so you know, you're going to go to the playground. A lot of people are going to want to probably play with that toy. If you're not willing to share it or want other people to touch it or possibly have it ruined, let's leave that toy at home.
So
That's one way to look at it.
Sure. Okay. Yeah.
I also think as a mom, you have to think of, in that situation, what is your goal in telling your child they have to share? Is your goal just to look good to other parents? I'm doing the right thing. I'm
Right.
following social norms. I'm avoiding conflict. Or am I giving my child a voice to be like, I don't want to share this toy. I'm playing with it right now. But
Right.
I'm bummed. So I don't know what the right answer is. I think it depends. For me, though, personally, I would say if it's not a toy you're willing to share or bring around a lot of people, we're going to leave it at home.
So then if she brought it and other kids wanted to play with it, you would then say, okay, well, go ahead.
If she had her time with it, that's
Yeah.
another thing too. I would want her to have a voice and be able to work through, hey, I'm playing with it, but maybe in about 10 minutes, you could take a turn playing with it.
Right.
To give them problem solving,
Yep.
communicating with one another, and how to not avoid conflict, but how to handle it.
Right. And I think one of the interesting points in I think it was the article that the woman wrote was, if you were an adult
Mm-hmm.
and you went to the park, and I
Mhm.
think she talks about a sandwich.
Yes,
and
she
I didn't,
did.
I didn't
A little
quite get the
different because it's
sandwich.
germs and
Right. But if I had the new iPhone 11
Mhm.
and a bunch of people came on and say, hey, let me grab your iPhone and check that out, I wouldn't expect that people would expect me to,
Yeah.
hand over my phone. Or
Mhm.
if I had a new pair of Beat headphones or
Right.
something, I wouldn't be expected to share,
Right.
in that situation. So why are we making
And
children?
it's interesting too, because we make children do it way more than adults have to, and they don't even have the brain capacity to truly understand
Oh, yeah. Okay.
sharing.
Yep.
Like when you think of a toddler, their brains aren't even fully developed to understand what sharing, empathy, kindness. They're very me.
Right.
Right. Because
And you
they
have to be.
You
Right?
have
Like
to
that's
be.
the-
Yeah, that's what we're.
Right.
Yes.
People are taking care of you your whole life. Up
Use your
until-
words.
Right.
Use your words.
Right,
exactly,
That's what
yeah.
we're like kind of telling them to say over and over again. So if they want to use their words and say, no, it's my toy, I want to play with it right
Right.
now, I think they should be able to do that. But you also have to teach your child, when a child says that, how do you respond when you're not the one getting what you want?
But you're
That's
getting
good,
down to
yeah.
that point, like it's parenting. It's and every kid is going to be different, and every
Mhm.
situation is going to be different. So, like, I think taking the time to think about as the parent, okay,
Mhm.
how are we going to approach this issue, and then taking the time to talk to your kids about it,
Absolutely.
and
Right.
bringing that out in the open. And I agree with this parent. Like, who cares what anyone else thinks,
Mhm.
and who cares what anyone else says? I'm trying to do what's best for my kid.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't read every book out there, and we've talked about that 21st century literacy before.
Right.
And you don't necessarily have to read books, but maybe talking to other people about it,
Right.
And not that this lady blasted it on social media, like I'm sure it got picked up
some
and
exposure.
spread out.
Exactly.
But reaching out and saying, hey, this happened, what would you do?
Mm-hmm.
Or I know Twitter has chat groups or just
Yep.
things you
Mm-hmm.
can look into on how to be a better parent. But I think that might have a stigma to it, like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I'll tell you, I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, on any given day, I think we all feel we don't know what we're doing at some moment.
And you just want to do the best for your son or daughter. So I think having those conversations is key, and keeping the topic open, not the topic, but just the lines of communication open.
Right.
And I also think it depends on what the object is. So if we're thinking about something in school,
right,
out on the playground, it's equipment that belongs to the school. I think kids should be sharing it.
Right.
If you've had your turn,
right,
it's time to share it. But if you're choosing to bring in your stuffed animal, let's say some of the third graders still bring in,
sure, yep,
and they don't want to share it, they probably shouldn't have to share it. But I would also, like I said, from the mom point of view, tell my child, don't bring it to school.
Right.
Right. It may not be the best place to bring it because there may be some conflict, and
right,
you don't want that.
Exactly.
And I think in that article, there was a child who brought colored pencils, and she had this great colored pencil set and didn't want to share it because colored pencils get broken, and kids don't treat them the right way.
Absolutely.
Well, they get used, and who should be the one to use them? Whose colored pencils they have?
Right.
And I think it's in the response. How is she responding to the child? No, you can't use it. Or is it like, hey, you know what? These are really special to me. I'm so sorry. I hope you don't take it the wrong way. But my mom and I we talked about it. We don't want it to be shared.
And I think that's an awesome point. Like the community, how do you communicate? Yes. I don't want to share.
Right.
Yes.
Is it that no kind of snotty, bratty answer?
About how it's
perceived.
Yes.
From
absolutely, absolutely.
Now, what about as a disciplinarian in school? If this issue would come up, how would you go about
handling
with it?
Yeah. Policy, right? That's
right.
Well, you follow policy,
right.
But it's interesting. This could veer into a million different topics, but something right now that we are focused on, and that was making one of my goals this year, is to bring in more of a restorative justice piece to discipline. So in a situation that involves sharing, no one's getting injured as far as physically.
Right.
I would want to bring the students together and actually talk it out.
Okay.
We've been talking about with Dr. Daniels having these talk circles with kids. So circle up, guys. We're talking it out. And actually having them communicate, the person who maybe owns the object, what are you feeling right now? How can you explain to this other student? How are you feeling? How can we come up with a resolution?
That's great. I mean, again, that communication part.
It's all about the communication. They don't know how to do it.
Right.
And we're in a texting, email or chat.
And they see that's how their parents are communicating.
Right.
And nothing against,
I
do it too.
Right.
My notes are on my phone.
I do it too. Exactly. Right. And it's easier to shoot somebody a text than actually communicate.
Right.
But the kids don't have the skills to be able to explain what they mean, have honest dialogue about it, and to handle when you're not always hearing what you want to hear.
Right. And I think the important thing is having an adult there to help scaffold. Okay, you said your piece. Now, how do other people feel about that?
Safe confines.
Yes.
So you feel safe to talk about how you feel openly.
Right. So from a discipline point of view, there's a fine line between, is it actually a mistreatment of peers issue, or is it a conflict issue?
Right. Okay.
So I think you have to balance the situation. But like I said, I really would like to start taking more of the approach of let's figure this out together.
Right.
And let's move on from here. Now, if it continued to be a situation after that.
Right. And then again, that's where maybe you do have that conversation of, look, you've brought this object to school 10 times, and each time you're coming into conflict, maybe it's something that you shouldn't be bringing to school because there is that issue.
And we've had that issue, especially with the younger students.
Sure.
Now, we deal with 3rd through 8th graders. Middle school don't really run into this issue.
Right.
3rd graders, Pokemon cards on the bus.
Sure.
You talk about stuffed animals,
animals,
figurines they bring.
But you
equipment.
also can't choose to share with one student and not choose to share with another student. So you're giving one kid your Pokemon cards on the bus, but you're telling this kid you can't have them. That's a problem.
Right.
So
but again, you may get into that. I know this child.
I know, and I trust them.
Destroys them, or doesn't have.
You're right. You're right.
The care.
Right. But in that situation, I would say keep your
It's
Pokemon
best,
cards
right,
in your
not to
backpack.
have them.
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Touchy.
It is touchy.
Well,
It is.
every situation is different. Every kid is different.
Right.
And, what happens with one situation with one kid could be, even though the situation can be the same, totally different
That's
depending
what
on
makes,
the players you have in the game.
right. And that's what makes the consistency in my job is tough because you want to be as consistent as possible, but it's not always black and white.
Right, and that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Policy looks at things more black and white,
Right?
Yes.
But nothing's ever black and white.
No.
We play a really cool game in our inclusion class. Our special ed teacher, Kim Bray, the kids all have ailments, so they'll come up and say, "Oh, I'm really really hungry," and her response is, "Oh, I'm sorry. Here's a Band-Aid." Because I know you can't do that with policy, but what you need, we're going to give you, right? So same with disciplinarian.
Right.
What your actions show, your consequences are going to be paired with those actions.
Right.
But yeah, if policy's written really closed,
which I would say ours actually gives a lot of wiggle room,
which is great.
Thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because every situation is different. Every child's different. Like when I used to teach 4th grade, well, why does so-and-so get to have X, Y, and Z? Fair
isn't equal.
Yes,
right?
exactly. And that's hard for kids to understand.
It's a tough idea to understand.
It's hard for adults. Well, I don't get why this teacher gets to,
and then we say, well, if you were hungry, would we give you a Band-Aid? And and then they're like, oh,
yeah,
they might not understand it, but they know
they start to get it through that. Yeah,
right.
Starts to make
and that's
sense.
What's crazy is now you have to do that stuff in school.
Yeah.
But you do because these are the cards you're dealt, right? So if this is the kind of stuff they need besides just how do you read and how do you
add that's social emotional learning.
It is social emotional learning.
It is important because we're not, I don't think, getting as much of it, because there are, here's your tablet. Here's your,
so
play on my phone.
Mrs. Michael, though, did just, I know in our last 3rd grade meeting, we have, a bunch of books now added to our library that are going to start to hit on those topics. And because that's kind of under the, I guess it's the Holocaust in the curriculum.
Yeah.
So in 3rd grade, it starts with like caring and empathy and through read aloud.
So that when they're in middle school, they understand more what biased, prejudiced, where all that comes from and how to handle situations like that.
So what about, so we have that now, balancing that out with being able to stand up for yourself in certain situations where, again, maybe being bullied or maybe being pushed a little bit, or, how do we, we're teaching share, we're teaching, sometimes avoidance of sharing and conflict by not bringing something in. But now sometimes the conflict is on your doorstep and you can't. How do you go about giving students that voice? Because, by talking about only kindness and empathy and all that, we're kind of pulling back a little bit on standing up for yourself, I think.
Right.
So there is that. That.
And that has to be taught. Danielle Madison, who's our counselor, K-4, we have this conversation all the time, is teaching kids the skills to communicate and handle conflict. But they literally have to be walked through it step by step. They need to role play it. They need to see adults modeling that as well. I think you have to give them the skills to do so. So with the colored pencils.
Right.
It depends on how you're going to handle that situation and what is now with our 3rd grade. Now we're struggling with conflict.
Okay.
They go from 0 to 100. So someone butts in front of you in line. He cut it.
Right. Yep.
Instead of saying like, "Hey, that wasn't right," or next step, maybe I should tell an adult. It goes right to like,
physical.
Boom, I'm going to push this person.
Right.
There was no steps in between.
Right.
So it's giving them those steps, telling them how to handle it and what to do if it's not going according to plan. It's a lot of teaching.
Yeah. And again,
teaching.
It's teaching that really when you look at our standards, might not be the things that you're supposed to be teaching necessarily, but you have to be able to still fit them in somehow.
Yes,
that's speaking and listening, right? So in language arts, there is but then how do you get that in? So
you have to
the language
creative
You have
ways.
to find. We were just having this conversation yesterday. at an administrative team meeting, and the day before we were in with the counselors in our child study team with Dr. Robin Daniels, who's
Right.
focusing a lot on social emotional learning. We talked about that the whole time of how can we fit in social emotional learning? How can we fit in these circles so that in any classroom, a teacher could be like, see a conflict, guys, circle up.
Right.
We're talking about it. We're
Right
getting
there
it
in the
out there.
classroom.
We're getting it out there. We're talking kids so that they are just used to communicating with each other and can problem solve together instead of avoiding. Because right now in a situation with discipline, something happens, we typically want to separate kids. You had a conflict.
Right.
You are here. You're here. Instead of bringing them together.
Sure, and we get those
But
emails
it's
from
a-
time to time. These people can't be in a
Yeah.
group together. They shouldn't sit near each other.
But here's
Yeah,
the
you
thing:
know.
it's a total change of mindset for
Right.
parents,
Sure.
for teachers, for administrators, for kids. It's a change of mindset
Right.
because a lot of times we just want to avoid. But who's to say those two students aren't going to see each other at a soccer game on Saturday? They have to know how to handle.
Right.
Or on the playground the next day.
Right.
Or when they do
Right.
come out from the nurse's office.
And what
Yeah.
you know?
what Dr. Daniels was saying, it's about righting wrongs and mending relationships
Right.
to make them better. You don't have to be best friends, but let's mend this relationship so we can move forward.
And really, I mean, that to me, like right now, watching the news this morning,
Mm-hmm.
you watched the trial in Texas, that
Mhm.
Amber Geiger trial, where
Right.
the brother actually came
Oh,
down off
yeah,
the stand to give her a hug and said, "I love you."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
18,
Whoa.
and he's only 18 years
Right.
old.
Well, did you hear what the mom commented though? Like, forgiveness and responsibility are two different things. We forgive what you did, but because of what you did,
Right,
you now have to
there's a
stand.
And that's why
Yeah.
it's a balance.
You have
As
to
I said,
stand
okay,
up.
I'm all about restorative justice, but does it take the place of a consequence, or can you blend the two
And
together?
I think you can.
You know,
I think that's what we
Well,
have to do.
She
Yeah.
got 10 years, right?
Right.
She got 10 years for I guess was it
Murder.
manslaughter, murder?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay. And there was someone on Twitter who was blasting off, I can't believe she only got 10 years. If the situations were reversed and the colors were different, there probably would have been a lot more. And once again, I mean, it's situational, and being a white middle class male, like I don't
You don't know.
I don't
Right.
know. And you know what? I don't want to say I'm lucky, but I don't know what it would be like to be in that
In
type
that
of
situation.
situation.
Right.
But then to say, well, she only got 10 years. I think a day in jail is
Right, would be frightening
holy
for me.
smoke. Like
yeah.
there's so 10 years is going to be a long time to sit there and think about
What you did.
holy
Right.
and
Right. And what we're finding does one for school, I'm going to go away from, jail, because that's a
Right.
totally different.
Sure.
But in school, does the crime actually does the crime match the consequence? So, example, you have a third grader, push somebody, lunch recess detention. Does it really match the crime there? What are they getting out of that? Some students are like, oh my gosh, I'm never going to do this again.
Right.
I want my recess.
Some students
But
are happy to kind of sit on their own and have lunch.
So
and,
it's such a balance of, and
in
you
third
see
grade though, and like in the lower grades, are they? Yeah, no, really, wow.
now it's
Just
tough.
depends
It
on
just
the- it's a
depends on
different
the
type of
student.
kid.
It really does. And even we also mentioned this 2 days ago, even in states where you have the death penalty, it's not changing people's behavior.
Right.
So you really have to think about the restorative piece in between.
Right.
That you can suspend a student in school or out of school, but what tools are you giving them to return?
Right. And I think that's the important thing is us giving them tools to deal with it so that they don't come to this point again.
Mm-hmm.
Or if they do come to this point again, maybe they handle it a little bit differently, a little better.
Exactly.
May still wind up in some trouble,
Right.
but they had tools. So
Right.
like each
Right.
time,
Because we're also dealing with,
you're
I would
developing
say,
minds,
middle
right?
schoolers. So sometimes I think the struggle is too, like you said,
Hormones,
people are,
right?
well, gosh,
Right.
everything.
Or
But their brains are not fully developed.
Right.
But you had mentioned that, people went out on Twitter, 10 years isn't enough, but we struggle with that. I'll make a phone call. Well, what's the other student getting? That's
Right.
not enough. And that, they're kids.
Right.
And kids make mistakes, but
Right.
you can't kind of put a stamp on them the rest of their life that they're a bad person because they made a mistake.
Right.
So you really have to balance that, and you try to, but it's a change of mindset.
well, that's
Because when
how-
it's
yep.
your kid that's wronged, You want
But
But
justice,
when it's
right?
but when it's the other way, it's
Right.
hard for parents when they're dealing with their child. I get it. Your kid's
Sure,
your
sure.
life. It's hard for them to see the other child
Right.
and then how the other parents might be feeling too.
Right.
Everybody's hurt.
Yep.
So it's almost like you have to heal everybody involved. It's
Yeah.
a lot of work. It's a lot of work on schools.
Well, so as
To have to do it all.
disciplinarian, you almost have to be like a social worker, and then maybe
Counselor,
sometimes
right.
That's how I feel
psychiatrist.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Most times I'm very lucky to work with wonderful counselors, and I feel like we're always working. I'm
Right.
usually with Mrs. Madison, Mrs. Kilpatrick, Mrs. Shaughnessy, working on situations
Right.
because the kids have to see that you're working together and we're trying to figure this out because we care about you.
Right.
But you kind of have to be a little bit of
And
everything.
three counselors in one small district.
Yeah.
And
we
wish.
could use probably
Right, yeah.
one or two more, right? If
Yeah.
You could almost use one per grade level,
Yeah,
probably.
honestly, to really get that social emotional
Yeah.
piece,
Yeah.
in a dream world, it would be fantastic.
Right.
But I think though, going back to the whole sharing thing, it all involves that social emotional learning.
Well,
That's
and
so
I think
important.
that's why Empatico is such a great
Mm.
tool, because even if you don't, do their connections and their hookups, there's still so many lessons on
Right,
talking
Absolutely.
to someone
Right.
and
Yeah, and
conflict
just how to
resolution,
communicate,
How to
most
communicate.
definitely, how to
Mhm.
listen, and what you should be doing when someone else is talking. I mean,
Right.
there's lessons in there are vital.
Yeah.
And there's a
and-
lesson
and a really
Joe and I had talked about in there that I said we should do during a faculty meeting.
Okay.
And it's you get cards, and you're listening for someone talking about a birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And when you hear that, you have to, once they're done, you have to paraphrase what they said.
Yeah.
And then you tell something about what you did on a day that it rained, and somebody else now is listening for that. Because I said,
It's interesting.
I find it very difficult for myself. I am
Trying to
definitely
focus.
someone, right, who's thinking about how do I want to
course.
respond to that,
Mm-hmm.
rather than taking it in.
So it's
Yeah.
funny on Survivor last night, and I'm not a Survivor person, but Stacy loves it. So
Okay.
That's her sitcom.
most definitely.
If Stacy loves it, you're loving
Yeah,
it.
well, I'm watching it, that's for sure. So it's, they're going on in the background, and these two people are just grilling this girl, and they're saying, all this information, and she's like so overwhelmed. And then it worked out. They then started asking her questions like, hey, how many brothers does this person have? So, and by her answering the questions, she won a Muti Idol and blah, blah, blah. Like, it's the Survivor stuff. But that's it. Like, in any given situation, you're going to get bombarded with stuff. And if you do start thinking about everything else, you don't take it in.
Right.
And
Right.
I mean, at 8 years old, who knows how to listen the right way?
Right.
And I see it in first graders yesterday in the Maker Club. We're talking, or they're talking to each other. And one kid's, this, two other kids are talking. I'm like, yo, what's going on?
Their minds are.
I know it's not school, but someone's talking.
Mm-hmm.
Settle down. Stop playing with that stuff.
Right.
Keep your hands together. And we don't do the whole brain teaching class. Yes, we'll do class freeze.
Right.
So then they're like just supposed to stop.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's a great start, because now they're like, all right, someone just said something.
Mm-hmm.
Let me stop. And then you get their attention.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I used to be hands on your head.
Yep.
Okay.
So literally they couldn't be fumbling with anything.
Right,
And then
yeah.
I'd be like, all right, guys, you're good. Go. But
Yep.
I couldn't get that full attention, eyes on me and hands on your head. So
Yep.
I knew they were just like,
Yeah, especially now with the Chromebooks. We
Right.
do
Tough.
hands in the air, and they say wave them like you just don't care.
love it.
Because they're looking at their screen. Their fingers are going on that
Yeah,
mouse. I'm
yeah.
like, yo, like.
Well, I even have I'll have students shut their Chromebook like
Mhm.
a quarter of the way
Right.
or halfway, and I get them laying down on the desk so they can still look at the screen. I'm like, no, I
Right,
had you shut
yeah.
it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So
But I think you have to stop, right? Because
Right.
if you keep talking,
well, it doesn't.
There-
It's not going anywhere.
Right, and you're going to
And then
repeat
the next
yourself
time,
over and over and over again.
you'll be saying in May, why do you keep doing this?
Right.
And
Exactly.
like the kids gonna say, because I've been doing it all year.
But literally, I feel like it all has to be modeled for them.
Yes.
I don't remember that
Yep.
being modeled for me in school, to be honest. When I think back, I'm like, did our teachers do that? But you have to show them what it looks like, what
Right.
it sounds like, and you got to just practice it.
Right.
Practice it.
And I mean, that's just it. I mean, maybe it wasn't modeled for us.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was. Maybe maybe it was modeled in different
In
ways.
different ways.
Maybe it was modeled by our parents that
Right.
parents are more busy
Mhm.
now, or who knows.
I know
But we have to do it.
I was
Yeah.
a bear in school. Like, I don't think
No
if
way.
you went back and asked my teachers now, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't be a favorite. And I didn't stop until I was literally called out. You know, if I was allowed to keep on going,
Right.
You kept going.
Oh,
You would have
yeah.
kept going.
Well,
Kids need boundaries.
Right,
They do.
absolutely.
And they
And they
crave
love them,
structure. As much as they try to push back a little bit,
Right.
Yeah.
they need it.
There was no being cute with me. It was stop or,
Here's
you
the
know,
consequence.
Right.
we're on the phone with your dad. Okay.
Well, you want them to be, we're trying to make them become good citizens.
Good people,
Good
yeah.
people. It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
And,
Well, it's like school's now so much more.
oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that's whether or not you like it or not. If you're in the educational field, this
Right.
is the stuff you
You
have
have
to
to
deal
wear a
with.
lot of hats.
Yep.
It's a lot of hats you have to wear.
Awesome. All right, so I think this was a pretty cool episode.
I
Yeah,
loved it, guys.
definitely.
Thanks for having me.
Christine, thanks for
appreciate
coming
you
on.
coming out, yeah.
This
I
was
know
fun.
it was early morning for you. So once again, I'm Ron Nover,
I'm Joe DiPaolo.
and this was.
Mrs. Bertulis.
And thanks for listening. Check us out on teachernerds.com. Check us out on Twitter @teachernerds. Joe, check us out on Instagram.
Teacher Nerds Podcasting.
Is it Teacher Nerd Podcasting or Podcast?
Ron? I think Teacher Nerd Podcast. That's Teacher Nerd Podcast on Instagram.
All right, Teacher Nerd
Sounds
Podcast
good.
on Instagram. And check out the Teacher Nerds store on teachernerds.com. Buy some Teacher Nerds gear. And Joe, that is Nerds with a
Z, Ron.
That is correct. Nerds with a Z. Thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next time.
Awesome. And that
That was cool.
Thanks, guys. That was cool.
Christine, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, it was
Gosh,
pretty-
it was